Thank you, Andrea. Coming back. And at this point, I'd like to invite all the other speakers today up for our panel discussion. And so while hi, Kirk, and just need Dwayne and Lisa. There's Dwayne, and there's Lisa. All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone. That was really fantastic. I want to first talk about the question of scale. And, certainly it came up across everyone's presentations. And there's the question of scale for smart shopping versus traditional shopping, relating to Kirk's presentation. And then with all of the kind of smaller platforms and how to I know Dwayne had a good comment on thinking about scale in terms of business outcome rather than being smaller than, say, Google and Facebook. So how do you think about scale? How do you talk about that with clients and or internally? And how do you kind of start to get buy-in or understand when something's really worth digging into, putting more effort into it? Because it's one thing to put budget, right? But it's the effort that is also part of budget cost. I mean, time costs money. So how do you really think about scale when you're starting to test or double down in any of these platforms? I don't know who wants to go first.
I mean, I guess for our clients, the way we think about it is basically like, are we going to make more money? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, we sell outcomes, we don't sell hours. I told this to like a prospect on Tuesday. You can buy hours, you just can't buy hours from us. And so we're like, if I can get another 50 sales, 100 sales, 1,000 sales, whatever it is on whether it's, Andrea, I talked about Quora, or there's Pinterest from Lisa, or like Snap or TikTok, I'm going to go after and get those customers, right? Assuming that like it's not a duplication of what efforts I'm already doing on another platform. I think the thing we always forget as well is that like Instagram wasn't a billion people when they started, right? They started out with these platforms as well. And when Facebook bought them in 2012, they were what, 500 million or something like that. And so I think for us to compare where these platforms are today to where Facebook is right now is a disingenuous comparison because they're not the same. And so if I can make my clients more money and they're happy with the customer that comes in, I'm going to do it. And we're not even going to talk about hours because hours is a stupid thing to sell. And anyone who wants to buy hours is not going to buy hours from me.
No, I understand that, but you still are spending time. So is your time worth doing it? So even if you're not charging by the hour, you still have to think about where your hours are best spent efficiently, right? Or
No, not really.
You don't think about time at all?
We don't think about time at all. It's about outcomes. Okay. It's either we're making you money or we're not making you money. It's what it boils down to. My clients are not paying me for hours and over I want to sell it. So I don't think about hours. I'm thinking about like what 2 or 3 things do I need to do in the next 2 weeks to help a client reach their $5 million goal this year or $3 million goal, whatever the goal is. And then I work towards that. I remove hours out of the equation because clients don't care if it took me 2 hours to make them $1 million or it took me 20 hours to make them $1 million. So why should I care how long it takes as long as I can like execute on what we want to do as a team and nobody on our team is burnt out. And we work really hard to make sure people aren't burnt out. Like I told someone the other day, it's a holiday in Canada, so you should probably take it off because we don't have Easter for 7 more weeks. And so like, I love that you want to work, but like, we don't have a holiday for 7 more weeks. So like, take it off and watch like TV or whatever. So yeah, we don't think about hours. Okay. Jenny, I just hate hours discussion. Sorry, I'm just really passionate about that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think those are very good points. What I would add to that is, in Dwayne's scenario, he's talking about millions of dollars. If you're, working for small or medium-sized businesses, you're not going to see numbers like that. And the time and effort and the human resources that go into some of these campaigns, I think that's sort of what you're getting to, Jenny, is like that's a part of the cost. So whereas on paper you may see, okay, has the proper ROI. this is hitting all the numbers, but there are these other costs that are involved. And definitely when I'm working on campaigns that are, a high level of manual work, that's something that the client is going to, because it's not just work for me, it's also for their team. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Andrea or Kirk, you have any thoughts on scale and effort?
Yeah. I am an advocate of start with the big guys first if you have never done it, or make sure that you have something that it's working, whatever that might be. And once you figure something out, then you should dedicate some of your time to exploring new options, because you might be missing out. And as Dwayne said, you shouldn't put all your eggs into one basket. You have to diversify. But don't do it until you find something that already works. And if nothing is working, then scale down. Think about which one is the one that actually where your audience is present, when intent and audience are actually in one place. Once that's working, then go to the next level.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. Kind of piggyback on the great things that have been said. So some of the questions I saw through specifically the smart shopping were actually almost the opposite, right? Of, hey, we're trying to scale and we want to scale and we can't. And so that's even a different, that's even a different category than like timing and knowing when to scale and how to do that well. So in that category, some of the thoughts with that, especially in a more automated type setting with shopping ads that we've seen, as communicating with someone on this is definitely definitely pushing for overall traffic volume. And usually you're going to do that by both bumping up that daily budget as well as lowering your ROAS target. But then over time, what we've seen is you kind of push Google into these new plateaus, if you will. And then we like to kind of inch up ROAS as well on that. So as they've kind of relearned with, hey, here's more of this audience, then now we're trying to get them to train in, okay, let's make that profitable. So kind of doing those, the right, it's like a seesaw that's going back and forth between revenue and ROAS, but it's a seesaw that's like rising. All right. So I think that's one way to think about scaling, and at least one thing. There are other things as well, specifically with that. But one other thought in terms of the bigger picture with scaling, especially with timing, is I think it's really crucial, no matter what channel you're managing, to be less obsessed with tracked revenue, with whatever is showing as tracked revenue in that channel. Because what we've seen happen is a client who is extremely performance minded in terms of that tracked revenue, they're limiting themselves by what they can scale because they're scared. I think there's fear there. And we definitely find pulling back and in some ways accepting the fact that that tracking has limitations, that as things more and more get into privacy issues, iOS 14 updates, all that stuff, we're in some ways we're going to be able to trust those numbers even less in terms of really what's directly tracked. And in some ways, like, that's okay. So what we try to communicate with our clients more and more is to be focused on overall on your top line, and try to maintain more of an ad spend to revenue ratio rather than a directly tracked entity. And I think that allows you to be less concerned so that you actually can scale, because you're less concerned about really tracking every single dollar to the channel, and you're more treating it like, hey, a rising tide lifts all boats, and like what we're doing is working, so let's just keep growing that in that way.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that and brought that up, because I think that that's really, really important, and becoming more and more important. Certainly in the issue of tracking challenges we're all going to be facing, and are already facing, but that's just going to continue to be a challenge. And I also really think that, particularly as automation becomes more and more integral, and certainly in Google, but across these platforms, that over optimization really becomes a liability. And so I think if you're really trying to hone in on direct tracked performance, it can lead to trying to over optimize your campaigns and essentially hampering them, rather than letting the automation do their work and kind of inform the automation with your business data and your insights and your strategic knowledge. So I'd love to hear more thoughts on that, because I really do feel like we're in this sort of transition period. You know, we've all been talking about automation for now a couple of years, but I feel like we're really kind of on this precipice of where automation really is actually finally working in new ways. I mean, any of us who had used, Target CPA when it first came out, it was right. We all knew it was like not great. We were guinea pigs. And smart shopping, to Kirk's point, in his presentation, now becoming often more performing better than traditional shopping. So how are you all thinking about automation, thinking about how that informs how you're optimizing? And I guess also in terms of what channels you're adopting, is that having any impact on where you're thinking about advertising next, or where an advertiser might fit, and how you're thinking about audiences? Anyone? Dwayne, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I was waiting. I didn't want to just jump
I
in
know.
there.
I know. I will
aggressive.
call now because I realize no one wants to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, for us, so like our internal discussion as a team is, I've told everyone, I assume in 24 to 36 months that we will not have jobs, in the sense that like Google and Facebook will do everything they can to remove us as an option between like us and the client, and whether that happens or not is irrelevant. So for us as a business, two paths we've had down is like take on more consulting clients and like worry less about execution. And then when it comes to like automation, we automate as much as we can. We find that balance between like, automation's working over here, great, let's keep it. Automation's not working over here, okay, let's go back to manual CPC or lowest cost on Facebook, or whatever the non-automation thing is we're going to do. So we try to do as much automation as we can. I think if we look back to like when Google launched dynamic search ads, like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, like that was not a great automation product back then. It was like really bad. Anyone who's like old enough to know what DSA was back then, you look at like DSA now in the last 3 to 4 years, it's a great product. And so we assume that even if we hate automation because it's like does an awful job even on low spending accounts, we know that in 2 to 3 years it will be better, and Google will just do their job to get rid of us, as will Facebook and any ad platform. So I think our goal with clients is just figure out where it's going to work or where it makes sense, remove the manual work for us. We automate as much as we can with like scripts and rules and other tech like Optimizer, and just embrace it as much as we can. We're not against it. It just depends on like which clients it makes sense for and which ones it doesn't, and just do the best we can, because we are renting time, and every ad platform is the best way to put it, right? Like we don't own the time, and everyone wants to bitch about every change Google makes, but let's just be honest, they're going to make more changes that we hate, and we're only renting time there. So it's embrace as much as you can, fight as little as you can, because they're going to do something tomorrow to piss us off, which probably means that ETAs are going to go away at some point in the next 6 months. And so if ETA goes away, what are you going to do then? Complain some more? Complaining is not going to get us anywhere. So it's like embrace automation, do much of it as you can. And then think about what you're going to do in 3 to 5 years, because we may not have jobs if Google and Facebook has their way.
Andrea, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, well, I thought about the question differently. I don't know if you guys would agree, but generally lately people talk about the cookie-less world and all that, and people say, oh, you need to look at the whole picture. If you put money here, everything should rise and you should be happy. That sounds in theory very nice. The way I like to see it or talk to people about it is, you at least, and this goes back to marketing 101, you really need to figure it out. What are those micro conversions? If you send someone to a page, is there any signal that you can capture that says, once somebody does this, statistically speaking, they might take the next step? That's how I like to think about expansion and how the world of digital marketing is changing, rather than just putting money and hope that at some times I see a rise because I put more money into it. And that's the way I try to preface it to clients and to other marketers as well.
I just shared a link. I was joking that Dwayne is like a prophet because literally today, Google just made RSA's default, right? So I think it's definitely coming. Yeah, no, just to kind of piggyback on what others have said again, that's what you do, right? You find smart people and then you say that their ideas are smart. No, I mean, it's a part of the automation thing too. Like if someone's listening, and especially in Google Ads, and they tried stuff a few years back, which I'm always amazed how quickly the years go by in this industry. But if you've tried it, like there's even just basic principles of how machine learning grows and learns on itself. And so if you've tried something and it didn't work a few years ago, that's probably because it didn't. And there's a good chance that actually, because of science, like it is better than it was now. So I think that's a big part of that evolution and transition. It's not that we're just all giving up and saying, yeah, I give up, I'm lazy, let's use DSA. It's that like, no, as exactly as Dwayne said, the DSA product is a better product than it used to be. Great, let's figure it out. So I think that's important.
Not to interrupt, Kirk, but do you think that we should take "it doesn't work" out of our vocabulary and think about it differently?
I don't know, because there might be,
or it doesn't work yet, or it doesn't work.
Maybe it doesn't work for my account and this client in this right specific moment.
In this moment,
because
yeah.
Because there are times where you do test something and you determine, man, that was not a great fit for whatever reason, like that didn't work. That doesn't mean that that's necessarily an industry best practice. It doesn't mean that it won't work for another account. And that's why even in some ways that's a benefit of agencies, right? Because they're not just seeing one account and kind of looking at that. They're seeing multiple things and making multiple changes and seeing what does work in multiple industries and accounts and that sort of thing too. And one last thing I would say, if you are interested in learning more about marketing automation, a guy named Patrick Gilbert just put out a book called Join or Die, and it is really a phenomenal book. It's really been kind of influencing how our team even thinks about automation, and I think it does a good job of not necessarily like, I think he does a great job of not just being, he's not just talking like for Google, and yet he is going kind of deep into here's some things that are actually happening in the algorithms and why it's so complex and why it's changed and gotten better, and it's been really a helpful one for us.
Great. And Lisa, how are you thinking about all of this?
I think a lot has been said by the other panelists. The only thing that that I think about for automation is some of the creative that is automated, and some of the campaign elements that take a human eye and to look at, and that sometimes go wrong or aren't really meeting the goals of the campaigns. Just a small.
And talking about creative, and Kirk, I thought it was really interesting thinking about smart shopping as social. So in terms of how you all are thinking about creative, particularly when you're testing out, either you're running a new product line, or you're trying a new channel, or you're trying smart shopping for a product line for the first time. How are you thinking about creative, and has that evolved? Are you thinking about that differently, probably going into this coming year than you were even last year? Or any thoughts on creative? I'd love to hear. Why don't we start with Andrea?
Sure. I have to start this conversation by saying I am not the best person at judging creative. Full honesty. And it has changed so much as well. Because what used to work 5, 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, for some of us that have been doing digital marketing for so long, the things we were showing people back there has changed significantly to what we are showing them today. have this constant argument about, is my creative, one, telling the user what they need to see very quickly, one, and two, is there anything I should be thinking? How can I think outside of the box instead of just showing the same thing everybody shows? A product and say, get it. Or a white paper and say, read the white paper, get it now, learn more. How can we actually show users something that it's different? I think that's something I like about Quora a lot. Creative, it's more about how you can actually pose questions and provide answers that are effective. Dwayne talked about Snapchat and TikTok, and that really revolutionized the type of creatives we use for those platforms. So it's something that it's constantly evolving. Really always look at what your competitors are doing. Are you being different? Are you zigging when they're sagging, and going from there?
Right. And Kirk, when you're talking about, oh yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
I was thinking about the creative. I mean, it's going to vary wildly per platform, right? And I was thinking about this a lot when I was working on updating this Pinterest presentation, because you can take the skills that you know in doing Google Ads and Microsoft Ads, and from every platform, but it's a little bit different. So you can't duplicate creative from one platform to the other in its exact form, which is, I think, a big mistake that people do. Because I can just see someone who's really hardcore into, keywords, going into Pinterest and using their keyword list, and it would be kind of a disaster. Same thing with the creative. It's going to be different from platform to platform. I don't think that the creative on Facebook would be suitable for Pinterest or Google. So I think not only differentiating trend-wise the creative from the competition, but also per platform, I think is really critical to test how those work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Kirk, how are you thinking about, I guess I'd love to hear more about how you're thinking about smart shopping as a social channel from a creative standpoint, and things that you're taking into consideration from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, so it's funny. So after I talked and I threw that line out, I was talking to someone here on our team, and he was challenging the idea, and he's like, I don't really know if it's a social platform itself, but I think the way that we see it and the way it targets is more social now. So it's still it's more audience based and user based, and then there's that important creative, right? But the platform itself is like the creative is showing in more of like a display type entity and not on a social platform. So that was kind of interesting to kind of think through, even in the short time since I said that. Always
All right,
learning,
well,
right?
even
Google keeps us
display.
on our toes.
Yeah.
So and some of that is stuff that we're still kind of thinking through, because traditionally, I mean, we've been like a paid search agency, and traditionally there's not been a ton of creative involved with that other than getting into things like display and YouTube. And oftentimes we'll work with the creative side of a client team in that, right? But as I think through kind of a bigger picture, where the industry is and where it's going back to some of that automation plus tracking vulnerabilities that in some ways I think have always been there, and now we're seeing that more and more, that I was referring to before. I think that we will begin to see creative as more and more of an essential role, but tied into, in a healthy way, kind of the old school style of marketing, which is more about developing this big picture. This is who our brand is. Here's what we're communicating. This is the focus, and then implementing that, and not being as worried of like, okay, let's check those display ads and like which one has the higher conversion rate, right? But more like carrying again that big picture, that brand growth, carrying that along, and some of that is even somewhat of just my like ponderings even now on it. But I do see that as where we are and are heading, which ironically again is a little bit more back to maybe that traditional marketing, what marketing has been like. And I think that we're starting to exit that ultra performance focused phase and get into that. And so that's kind of how I see creative fitting in there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the merging or convergence of brand and performance is a big thing that we've been seeing over the past year, 2 years, and kind of ties into the measurement challenges, right? Like having a strong brand is going to be more and more important. It is going to help you connect faster and more cheaply with your audiences, and make your efforts across all of these channels more powerful using them together. Like, and as Kirk was talking about earlier with smart shopping being on, user targeting on, whether you're reaching somebody cheaply on Gmail, and then they see your brand again on Pinterest, and then they see your brand again in Snap, and that brand resonance and that brand messaging is going to hopefully thread across those channels. Dwayne, I know you are obviously in Snap is obviously heavily creative focused. Is your work in Snap in particular impacted or changed the way that you think about creative, or is it really just another platform that you think the creative has to be tailored for?
It's probably a bit of both. I mean, it is a different platform than Facebook, as is TikTok is a different platform than.
Has working in Snap made you think more critically about creative in other platforms?
No, I don't think it's made us think about it differently. Our goal and the way we've like pitched it to clients the last, 2.5, 3 years is we basically want to try to like collapse the distance between like someone seeing our ad and taking the action, whatever it is. It's kind of like Andrea said, like a micro conversion. So in our case, like we need someone to add to a cart, and we need like 10 people to add to cart to get 5 people to check out to get 2 people to convert, whatever the numbers are. Because we know if we can get like enough people to each stage of the funnel, we can hit whatever our ROAS goal is, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's finding that ad that like clients are happy with from like a brand perspective, but also like drives performance, which isn't easy. Some of our clients are super passionate about that brand. And what I mean by that is they basically want this ad and only this ad, and they won't listen to me. And so I've got to find a way to like take that creative and find an audience that will work for. And then sometimes our clients, well, if it doesn't work, we need to like make new creative or different creative, because like, I like that you like this, but the people don't like this. So I don't think it's made us change how we think about it as much as we just need to find out like what creative works for like what platform. A good example is, back in the summer, we got like a PJ's client who's done obviously phenomenally well during the pandemic. And we found, video was doing really well for them on Facebook back in like July, where a lot of people were saying video's dead and we can't do video on Facebook and yada, yada, yada. Whereas other clients, they were finding static images were doing really well on Facebook. And some clients find that like a story poll ad does really well, where some clients find a story ad or a Snap ad does better on Snap. And so it's just finding like what ad unit for what client works, and what ad format works, and then trying to just double down and just put more money into it. It's a challenge when clients make the creative. So like half our clients make the creative because they have like a designer in house and they're very passionate. The other half are like, do what you want, send it to me, make sure it's on brand, and like just run what you think is going to work. And so that's great. We can like test things. Like we're going to target yoga people or Padalot or whatever that bike thing is called people, and like we make creative that goes after those people and then see if it works on it. If it doesn't work, we test something out. So it hasn't changed as much as we spent more time trying to like just collapse the distance between an ad being seen and the action we need taken, whether that's like a purchase on an e-commerce site, a demo sign up on a SaaS or tech client, or purchase of like some sort of SaaS product.
All right. And for those in the audience, if you want to use the chat or Q&A, feel free to keep those questions coming. We have a fun one from an anonymous attendee. It's directed at Kirk, but I will put this out to the whole panel because I do think it's sort of an interesting thought exercise. So Kirk, if you were to start your agency all over again today, what client niche would you target? And I guess I'd also, so client niche and or I'm going to amend this a little bit. So if there's a client niche or particular like channel or type of marketing that you would target. So we'll start with Kirk.
Okay, so client or channel. So client niche, I fall into the camp of not wanting to target a specific niche. And so probably I would not do that again. And kind of my reasoning for that, and I do know, I mean, I have friends who target a very specific, like they target dentists and that's what they do, right? They're the dentist PPC person, and it really does help them because there will be referrals and things like that, which is great. One of the biggest reasons that I don't want to do that, and I haven't, is I am a little bit concerned of becoming over leveraged in a niche that, you know, something could change on that at any day. And so that actually happened to agencies with COVID, unfortunately, right? So you would have agencies who were over leveraged and targeting specifically maybe events or some sort of travel, and really kind of decimated them. And so, and understandably, that's somewhat of a rare thing that happened, but also it can happen. So that's one of the reasons why I'm just a little bit of a bigger fan of not going directly into one niche. Also, I think sometimes there's learnings too that we've discovered just from managing and handling different stuff that helps us in thinking through those. Channel specific, I think that I would stick to what I'm doing now as well, but some of that is not, like, that's not for everyone, you know? Like I know, you know, Dwayne has an agency, right, where he's doing more channels and he's got this team and it's awesome. They're focusing on some of the social stuff and all that. So some of that is just even my own like personality and skill expertise and just wanting to remain focused on Google Ads and Google Shopping. So like that's what we do. That's what we're known for in that way. So I think some of that is even just a choice with what you're able to do, the opportunities you have, and like how you take those steps as they're occurring as well. So yeah, hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Does anyone else want to comment on that? Dwayne, are you happy with where you are?
Yeah, I'm happy where we are.
Yeah.
We've had a crazy last year. I worked 6 or 7 days a week last year. I'm not gonna lie, I worked way more than I should. But actually, when we started the agency, like I targeted anyone. Like I quit my job. I had a couple clients. I was willing to do work for anyone, and I realized it wasn't the best idea because sometimes we get clients that I don't want to work on. Sometimes it just didn't make sense from business. And we also used to sell hours back in 2017. And two of the changes I made in 2017, 2018 was basically stop selling hours because it doesn't make any sense. The people who genuinely want to buy hours, all things being equal, are just really cheap clients who don't really respect what we do. And then the other switch I made is just like only focus on like ecom, D2C, you know, SaaS and tech. Those are kind of like what my background is professionally over the last 14, 15 years. It's what I'm really good at. It's what I'm interested in. So I'd say I've already like made the evolution. If I was to start the agency today, I'd do what I'm doing now. I'm really happy where I am. I like working across, you know, various channels. The team likes working across various channels, having the ability to like, you know, mentally make that switch from like I'm doing Google Ads and shopping and Microsoft to like Facebook and Snap, and having that ability to think like cross channel is really helpful, even if we're not run the channel for a client. Like we talked to a prospect the other day, and someone on our team comes from an affiliate background, and client's like, hey, do you guys want to like manage your affiliate? I'm like, well, no, we don't want to manage your affiliate, but we'll like consult on the affiliate for you and help you understand how that affiliate affects like what we do and everything else in the business, because their goal is to basically like double their business this year, which I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see. So I'd say that I am doing what I do. I am doing what I want to do now, and then what I'm doing now is what I would do if I was to start things today, especially because obviously e-com and D2C have just like grown in the last year, and so everyone's trying to like get in that space, and it's challenging.
Yeah. Andrea or Lisa, either within your own roles or within your agencies, how are you thinking about sort of where you are now and where you're thinking about going?
Well, on my end, I only work with B2B clients, and when we think about B2B, people think it's only like one tiny thing, but there's so much inside of B2B.
Yeah.
You can focus on things that are high price B2B items or low price B2B items. You can focus on healthcare or SaaS, technology. There's so much breadth. So B2B is that fun place where you can still find a vertical that it's big enough and not just be dentist, like Kirk says, because I know a lot of people that had a really rough time last year because they only focus on travel or hotels or destinations. It was rough, and if it happened once, it could happen again, or could come one a disruptor that changed how that's done. So if you try to find a niche, find something that has wiggle room or space or touches a few different industries within that, I think that would be the safest place. And in terms of platforms, the reality is, and this goes back to your first question, Ginny, about time, managing different platforms and having the time to understand how those different platforms work and how to make them successful requires a lot of time and expertise. And so try to find not just one, because again, you don't want to put all your eggs on one basket, but try to find 2 or 3. Those are going to be your core. And then you can consult on anything else that might affect you directly or indirectly, as Dwayne said. I think that's how I would approach it.
Great. And how about you, Lisa?
I feel like what I do now is how I've started over, because when I started in marketing, I was doing more marcom and more of a generalist. And, as online advertising came online and I started to learn about it, I'm like, this is what I need to do. I love this. This is neat. It's complicated. I don't understand it, but I want to understand it. So I feel like, there was a point at which I already started over. I think in terms of the client niche, I think I like to have a diverse portfolio. I think everybody touched on that. It's great. Even within focusing on B2B, you have such, a variety of different types of experience. Even if you do the same type of vertical, even if you are the dentist's PPC person, they're still going to have, they're all totally different. They all have different personalities, right? So.
All right. Great. Question for you, Lisa, has come in. Any recommendations for a restaurant trying to build a following on Pinterest through advertising, aside from recipes? Any thoughts on that? And we can open it up to others as well. But Lisa, if you have any thoughts.
Besides recipes?
Yeah, aside from recipes. So I get not promoting recipes, how to think about building a following.
Yeah, I heard, I don't have, that's a good question. I heard something on, I think it might've been on NPR this morning or the other morning about a restaurant that was promoting itself by giving away gift cards to other restaurants. And it was, right. So it got them attention. It promoted eating out and the local community. So I thought that was really a neat idea.
That is cool. Very interesting. Any other thoughts on building a following? I don't know if, Lisa, that answers your question or gives you some thoughts. But I think kind of to your point, Lisa, is think outside the box. And I guess, it could be, so Pinterest is so visually oriented. So what is it that you're going to kind of visually inspire your customer base to be interacting with you with? And I guess I also would say if you're seeing things work on Instagram, you might be able to transfer some of those learnings over to Pinterest.
Right. Maybe? Instead of recipes, why not showcase the dishes that they have? Because people might be, if they're searching for recipes, they could see not a recipe, but that particular dish, because you can geo-target it.
Yeah. Or if you do cool things with plating, things like that, showing how your dishes get plated. If you have, creative ways of displaying the food, things like that could be cool.
Yeah, and people are looking for things to do.
Yeah.
Want to know what the restrictions are for those particular restaurants, if depending on the area that they live in.
Great. All right. Any other thoughts? Anyone else want to throw out some thoughts? Oh, good. She says thank you.
I was gonna say, like, you could try to promote, like, depending on what kind of restaurant it is, I guess, like where the food comes from, like what farms or whatever it comes from. So try to turn like the food itself and maybe the like chef or chefs into like famous people. Because lots of people research like
Oh, yeah.
different kinds of
That's great.
mushrooms or different kinds of this and where it comes from. And people are trying to eat healthy, especially on Pinterest where it's highly a lot of like parents. That's one of the high large groups on Pinterest, and they're into like healthy eating for their kids and stuff. So I think trying to promote where you get your food from could be really good if you're in that whole like nose to tail, hippie, good food stuff.
All right. I guess I will just bring it back to final thoughts on, and I do want to bring it back to scale in terms of, I guess, and let me kind of rephrase the scale question, because I think one of the things is that fear of there isn't going to be scale, so why bother? I already have enough going on with the channels that I'm already managing. Or, if it's smart shopping, I've already got, things that are happening in my traditional shopping campaigns are doing just fine. I tried smart shopping. It didn't work, right? It didn't work. And so I'm done doing that. I guess, so how in this year ahead, we've got, 2021, how are you or advising your clients to be thinking about trying new things? Andrea, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. And I think this is just a summary of everything we've talked about in this section. Really, it's about not trying something new unless you have something that it's already working. Don't go everywhere. Start small. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. You don't know if one platform will crash and burn. Government regulation is probably coming, or it already came to a lot of countries. So think about how that might impact your different campaigns and where you are getting revenue today. Don't focus too much on that final sale, because that's not the only thing people are doing to be able to get to the final part of your buyer's journey. And always think about there's also an opportunity and there's value on re-engaging the person who already shopped and make them the people who are going to share with their family and friends how awesome your product or your service is. So try to leverage everything and think a little bit outside of the box. It's okay to take risk and try a new platform. Just don't go insane. Start small, $5,000, $2,000, whatever that might translate to your business, and go from there. Start small. If something didn't work 2 years ago, everybody in this panel made excellent points about how automation is changing, and the cell phone you had 10 years ago, it's not the cell phone you have today. It's pretty smart. And the same thing is happening with platforms. And I think the other thing that people tend to emphasize a lot is, oh, but Quora and TikTok, they don't have the same capabilities, and I cannot see all these things that I can see on Google, but Google and Facebook have been around for years at this point. So these smaller platforms, they are catching up, but they are doing it very quickly. Every 2-6 months, you will get something major that is coming. So something to think about as well.
Great. How about you, Kirk?
I'm finding that conversation is beginning sooner and sooner for us with our clients. And I mean, even before their clients. And I think that's started to really help us. So as we try to talk through, here's how we should look at what we should expect with experimentation and budget and performance, and then what that will look like. We're trying to even do that before we land them, so we can really make sure that we're on the same page, so that we're not just kind of landing them as a client and then trying to help try to reframe their mind on performance marketing versus kind of the bigger picture brand awareness, as well as, like I talked about with like spend to revenue and gross ratio and things like that. So I think that's that's a piece of the puzzle. In terms of something like that, we'll definitely we've definitely tried to be more and more communicative on, let's say, experimentation as just being an expected part of the budget, and we're still even working on that, even with current clients of trying to continually transition to that mentality. And so some of that sometimes is just patience, being willing to utilize data as well as conversation and just communication on that to try to help them understand and communicate on that, but also not pushing them more than needs to be, because at times there might be a level of, yeah, we have a channel that's working. So honestly, if you want to scale, let's just keep utilizing this that's already working and then expand in the future. Yeah, I think there's just so many different aspects of that, and probably making sure that you and the client are on the same page and then able to think through that together is really a key to a good long relationship.
Great. All right. And quickly, Dwayne, and we had one quick note that, Dwayne, if you could speak up just a touch, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, basically with clients, I mean, most of them trust us to like figure out where to spend the money. They just like give us a budget per year, per month, whatever it is, and we spend it how we want. I think for new platforms, we just look at it as, if we're starting to max out on Google or Facebook, whatever the platform is, where else can we spend the money? We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, and we test it and see if it works. If it does, we keep it. If we don't, we move on. Clients hire us because we're the experts, so they expect us to like basically take the charge and not so much tell them what to do, but guide them in the direction we want to go, based on just their experience, because they're the expert in what they do, and we wouldn't tell them how to run their business.
Yeah. Great. And how about you, Lisa? Final thoughts?
I wish John Lee was on this panel, because Microsoft ads for so long was the not enough scale, so why bother?
Right. Yes. Yes.
I immediately, I'm like, oh man,
Yes.
I wish John was on here. I mean, I think that with that attitude, maybe they're not doing it right, or have the proper expectations. So I think looking at complementary channels to the ones that are working, and then making sure that those are customized, as I can. It seems like I'm going through this in my head a lot today, just not duplicating the same things.
Yeah. And I would say, kind of, I guess, final thought is something you're doing not directly attributable to that channel, but maybe you're seeing a lift in brand search. Where's that coming from? That you might see correlations and relationships that you wouldn't necessarily have intuitively thought. So, all right, we are at time. And so thank you, all four of you. Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. Thank you to the audience for all the fantastic questions. And tomorrow we've got another great lineup with Nancy McLaughlin talking about Amazon shopping. Brooke Osmondson is going to be talking about tracking reporting for e-commerce sales. Frederick Valles is going to be talking about PPC bidding and smart bidding. So kind of continuing on many of the themes that we've been talking about today. And then Brad Geddes is going to take it home with a discussion on ad testing in PPC. So thank you again. And David, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. You did a great job. Also, thank you to Andrea, Kirk, Dwayne, Lisa. Y'all did a really good job. I appreciate it. Just for the attendees, we'll be getting started tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is GMT -5. And also there will be another networking opportunity, which is a happy hour at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. So those are a lot of fun, and I encourage you to join us then. Other than that, thank you, attendees. We really appreciate your participation, and hope we've passed the audition. Take care.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.